Right. Setting up your meeting. Okay, hello everybody, and welcome to the second Master Chess Web Show of the week. And we have another special guest, very special guest actually today, who I'm going to introduce in a second. But first of all, I'm going to show you some of the things that he gets up to in a very busy lifestyle. And right, so I just need to change my tab here. So right, so this is one of the things that our guest created, the Chess in Schools and Communities, and it's actually something where my son aspires to teach as well. He started doing some shadowing now for one of the teachers, and he really likes it. And then this is something else, the London Chess Classic, right? So we didn't have like any tournaments in Britain pretty much, and then suddenly we got this one, and this is we had 2021. We don't have 2022 yet, but I'm sure that will be coming. And then we've got this one, Chess Fest, right? And it's brought to you by Chess in Schools and Communities, supported by the Mayor of London. And this is like a huge chess event, as far as I understand it, that takes place in places like Trafalgar Square. And everybody is playing chess. I think they're playing on demonstration boards as well, you know, sort of with big pieces and stuff. We're not done yet. We're not done yet because this is the premier equipment and book supplier in the UK, which I think our guest is a co-owner of.
That's a funky chess set you got there.
Right, that's Skyline Chess, and
we'll fancy playing a queen ending with that one.
Got all of this, and then finally it's going to be absolutely obvious who it is when we go to this one, the Telegraph at Telegraph Chess, and it is of course the one and only Malcom Pein. So right, good morning Malcolm, and thanks very much for fitting us into your extremely busy schedule. I think Andrew's got some questions for you, but we're probably going to like wing it anyway, because that's what we always do. So over to you, Andrew and Malcolm.
Yeah, Nigel, Andrew, thanks for having me on the show. There's a certain feeling of getting the gang back together here, since we should probably tell the viewers that we're old mates. We used to spend a lot of time at tournaments together. So we'll try and keep the in jokes to a minimum, or at least if we accidentally make some, we'll try and explain them. But yeah, that's a decent summary of what I get up to some of the time. The other thing that I'm very engaged on is manager of the England team and trying to raise sponsorship for chess generally. And most recently, I'm trying to do stuff with Ukraine, trying to find homes for Ukrainian chess players. We're getting requests from Ukrainian chess players to be hosted here. As they're trying to escape the war. We're getting requests every day into the ECF office, and so far I've managed to place one, but finding a home is just the first part of the struggle. You've then got to get through the Home Office bureaucracy. So, and stage two is of course getting them across the border, which hopefully will happen later today in the case of the first couple.
We'll if you've got any links or contact details for people to get in touch about that, we'll put them on our website, and I'll post them generally as well.
Great. Okay. Well, I mean, if you want to help host a Ukrainian chess player, then actually just contact the English Chess Federation via their website, which is just office@englishchess.org.uk, or alternatively, an easier URL. You can reach me directly through the shop at info@chess.co.uk. So that's a trivial one.
Okay. I'll try and post some prominent contact thing. So yeah. Okay, Andrew, you've got some questions, I think.
Well, obviously, the last few minutes has given the listeners an idea of just how wide-ranging Malcolm's activities are in the chess world. And he's obviously a very busy person, but it wasn't always like that. As he says, we've known each other for a long time. So perhaps he could tell the viewers, how he actually got into chess in the first place.
Well, I think it happened in 1963. I was 3, and one of my cousins, a guy called Eddie Pein, who was one of South Africa's best players, had come over to Liverpool, where I was born, to see my folks, and also to watch Liverpool Football Club. And he was playing chess with my dad, and apparently I was extremely annoyed at being ignored while they were playing chess. And I was so annoying that in the end they decided to teach me. So that's fundamentally how I learned. I was then I just became extremely good. Like I found, I don't know, maybe 20 years ago or something like this, I found some games I played when I was 6. And, I was a match for any of the prodigies nowadays. Well, not all of them, but some of them. So in terms of what it was like 50 years ago, I was really, really good because chess prodigies were not really much of a thing in those days. But the point was that my dad didn't actually realize. He just thought it was normal. And then one day he heard about Liverpool Chess Club, and he took me there. And someone said, "Oh, there's a guy who runs a junior chess club in Liverpool." And this guy's name was Mike Price. He unfortunately died of cancer some decades ago. But Mike Price was a teacher in a school in a suburb of Liverpool called West Derby, and he turned this pretty random primary school in West Derby into the national champions. Like they won the sort of the UK schools championship. Can't remember if it was sponsored by the Sunday Times in those days. It used to be many decades ago. And one of the players who I'm sure some viewers will know, and of course you guys know, one of the players there was Sheila Jackson.
Yeah.
And Mike Price taught Sheila how to play, and she later became British women's champion and played for England, and still will be playing for England seniors, we hope soon. And so Mike used to run a chess club on a Sunday somewhere out in West Derby, and my dad somehow heard about this and took me along, and I just beat the best player, and they were all completely staggered. And of course, when they told me I'd done that, I then proceeded to lose to him, because you'll both know from your junior coaching experiences that once you tell a small child that somebody's rated higher than them, they'll psychologically react to that. But when I was blissfully ignorant of who I was playing, I just won. And then they took me along to the Liverpool Junior Chess Congress, which was arguably the biggest junior chess congress in the world at the time. It had like somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000 children. And my first tournament, it was in 1965. I was playing in the under-7s, and I turned up with a scorebook and a pen. And I thought it was weird that no one else had, but I was the only kid who knew how to write the moves down. And I got black in the first game, and it went 1 e4, e5, queen h5, knight c6, bishop c4, to which I replied, obviously, knight f6, because I'd been taught by my father to develop my pieces and attack the center. Queen takes f7, mate, and I burst into tears. And one of the teachers took me to one side and realized that since I was the only one writing down the moves, I might not be a complete rabbit, and just sort of said, well, took me through how that happened. And then I think I won my next 16 games once I'd figured out what fool's mate was. And then I don't know exactly what happened, but I didn't play much chess between the age of 7 and 10, because I wasn't allowed to join the primary school chess club. You can tell I'm not bitter, but essentially the head teacher's son, who was in the junior school, because I was in the infants, right, at the time. Her son was the best chess player, and so she just said no infants allowed in the chess club. So I wasn't even allowed to join the school chess club. But I did do some studying. My dad got me a chess book. Thinking about it now, there's an absolutely fantastic chess book I'd recommend to anybody. It's called Logical Chess Move by Irving Chernev. Yeah. Which literally explains. I think, Nigel, I think you've recommended this book on Tiger Chess at some point. And it's fantastic for beginners, because it literally explains every single move. It leaves absolutely nothing you're in no doubt as to the reason why every single chess move in every single one of the games was played. And he taught me. He got me that book, and then later I got a great book called The Guardian Book of Chess by Leonard Barden, to whom I think we all owe a great debt, because he nurtured the English chess explosion, didn't he? Of which we were all a part. And that way I learned some openings in that book.
Astonishingly, Barden's still going, isn't he? Barden's still going. How many years has he written his Guardian column?
Well, I mean, he's got the I think the people with the longevity. There's the chap in Ireland, isn't there? Leonard's the longest, and I think I'm number 3. But I mean, Leonard's been writing. There's a nice, lovely article about him on chessbase.com somewhere. We could find the exact number, but I mean, I think he's been writing for more than 60 years.
It's incredible, isn't it?
He's amazing, and it's still a great chess column as well. I mean, the one every week in the Guardian is fantastic. I guess I've written probably maybe more columns than him, because I've only been writing chess columns since 1987, and they've been every single day. Whereas Leonard does one a week in the Financial Times and the Guardian, and he used to do one in the Evening Standard, of course, that we all loved, the chess puzzle, until they scrapped it, damn them. Actually, I've got to say, it's ironic, isn't it, that when a Russian took over the Evening Standard, they got rid of the chess. Always thought that was ridiculous. But yeah, so that's how I got into chess, and then I got into the junior chess scene a little bit on Merseyside, and then one day I got invited to a Leonard Barden junior tournament. He used to run these junior training tournaments, and my first game I beat a guy called Nick Benjamin, who was supposed to be I think one of the best. You'd remember him better than me.
Yeah, very strong.
Him and his brother Jonathan.
Yeah, and I just beat Nick. I just crushed him, and then Barden realised that this kid from Liverpool wasn't bad, and so he invited me to everything else after that, which was great. I mean, it was very motivational. I mean, we could learn a lot from the way Barden did this, and I'm always trying to tell the junior people here in the ECF just to listen to Barden's advice on which children are the best up and comings, but also the way that Barden motivated us all. You remember there was, whenever you turned up to a Barden chess tournament, Andrew, you remember this as well, of course, I'm sure, that there was this painstakingly written out list of the ratings of all the junior players.
Yeah, these charts,
written out these charts. Yeah, and you know that was the first thing you did. You went up to the chart. You got to the venue. You went to the chart to see where you were on that list. It was incredibly motivating, I found at the time, I think. And Leonard managed to keep records on all the best junior players using a card index, which conceivably some of the younger viewers won't even know what that is.
Well, it takes up a lot of time, that's for sure.
Yeah, and then I became one of the country's best junior players. Of course, there were people who were more talented than me, but you know, one of the better juniors. And then I went to university and played quite a lot there instead of doing my university course, which I found rather dull. And I wrote my first chess book on the Exchange Grunfeld that was quite well received. And once I left university, I mean, when I left university, Margaret Thatcher had just taken power in Britain, and the economy, which was collapsing when she took over, to be fair, had completely collapsed by the time she'd been in power for a couple of years. And there just weren't really many jobs. And myself and a lot of other people of my generation actually thought, well, actually, chess is probably a better punt than trying to get a job. So we played chess, right? And there was a living to be made playing chess. There was a decent weekend circuit. There were magazines to write for. There was a bit of teaching if you could find it. Nothing like there is now. But you could make a living, particularly because, I mean, at the time, England was an absolute chess superpower. I mean, I remember going to play in Belgium one time when I was in my early 20s and thinking, this is ridiculous. I'm like the third strongest player in Belgium. Although I'm really, not even in the top 20 in England, but I'm like the third strongest player in Belgium. It was Luc Wienans, Jadoul, and then I reckon I can beat anyone else. I can beat any of the others. And in France, you could go to, I mean, I used to win open tournaments in France. And that was a lot of money. I mean, a heck of a lot of money. I remember, I mean, it must have been because I was living with, she was then my fiance. But I mean, I remember I went and played a tournament in the south of France and came back home with a load of banknotes. And when I changed it, it was like about £2,500, which in 1988 was a lot of money.
Yeah, absolutely.
34 years ago. And, they'd paid all my travel, they'd paid all my accommodation. and I'd had a great time, and it was possible to make a decent living, and so we all did, right?
Yeah.
Well, we got by.
We got by. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't making any of us rich, but we got by.
Yeah.
And then I guess what happened was that in 1988, I sort of looked around and I decided pretty much, well, you're not a bad player, but you're not good enough, really. And you're not good enough to make it to very strong grandmaster. I was international master at the time. So I think I'll just quit professionally and try and diversify. And at that point, Chess Space had just appeared. And I managed to get myself a part-time job working with the guy who was distributing it in the UK, but he didn't really give a damn about it. And then one day he said to me, "Do you want to take it on?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely." So at that point, I became a small businessman, an entrepreneur, and I brought Chess Space into the UK, and I've been distributing it ever since. For 34 years or something like that, maybe a bit more. And I used to advertise in Chess Magazine, and then Chess Magazine was taken over by Robert Maxwell, but Robert Maxwell got into a lot of financial trouble because he overextended his business. He had a massive publishing company called Pergamon, and he owned newspapers, he owned football clubs. He was an incredible character. In fact, one of the things I did, one of my first journalism jobs before I got the Daily Telegraph gig, was I wrote for a newspaper called The European, which was well ahead of its time. Maxwell realized that that Britain needed to become more integrated in Europe, and so he started a newspaper called The European, which had focuses on European stories, and it was actually a great publication. And I used to write an enormous chess column for it. I mean, an absolutely massive one. If you can imagine what a broadsheet newspaper, well, you know what a broadsheet newspaper looks like. Yeah. I used to have, I think I had a whole page,
Wow.
I'd have to try and find it in the newspaper library, but I had a massive chess column. And it's funny, the way I got that gig was I heard about the newspaper and thought, that's amazing. If I could get a chess column in that'd be fantastic. So I went down to Fleet Street to where the offices were, and managed to trick the doorman that I was a journalist on the paper, and walked in and just marched into the managing editor's office and said, "You need a chess column." And it was funny because he was one of these classic old newspaper guys, a chain smoker, a suit with enormous braces. I mean, this might not mean much to some of the younger people watching, but our generation will know that sort of stereotypical newspaper guy from the 1960s, 70s, 80s. I said, "You need a chess column." He goes, "Brilliant, you're hired." And that was one of the first columns I ever had. And then, of course, the newspaper went under with Robert Maxwell's demise. And at that point, Maxwell had already bought Chess Magazine, and he'd also bought a business off a guy called B.H. Wood, who was one of the country's strongest players and our first sort of chess entrepreneur. And B.H. Wood used to run a chess business, he used to run chess bookstores at congresses. He had a mail order business, and he started in 1935 Chess Magazine. And he'd become pretty old by, I don't know, I might have this year slightly wrong, by about 1988, 89. And he sold out to Robert Maxwell. And I used to advertise Chess Space in the magazine. So when Maxwell's business empire went bankrupt, the assets were for sale. And so I got together a group of people and we bought Maxwell Macmillan Chess and Bridge.
Yeah.
But what we couldn't do was buy the publishing because someone else was after that. So we gave that person the publishing arm, and that became Cadogan Chess, which was then bought over by what we now know as Everyman Chess, for whom I think you've both written books. I suspect that I have. I took on with my partners the mail order business and the magazine. And I had this mad idea. I decided to open a chess shop. So this is 1992, June 1992. And I thought, yeah, I mean, where do people buy their chess books at the moment? Well, there's a shop in London called Foyles. It's an enormous enormous bookshop. Foyles is Foyles. In those days, Foyles was the most unfriendly customer experience imaginable. So if you wanted to buy a book in Foyles, you had to find where it was. Okay, that wasn't so difficult. There were one or two signs indicating which floor had which books. But if you knew where the chess was, that was fine. But if you wanted to buy a book, you didn't, like in an ordinary bookshop, take it to the counter and say, "I'll have this, please." No, you had to take it to a counter and say, I want to buy these books. Tell me if I've got this wrong, but this is what I remember. And then they give you some kind of document, and you then have to take that somewhere else and pay somewhere else in the shop, and then come back and then collect your books. I mean, there was no one to help you. It was the most unpleasant. I would describe the customer service as dismissive.
I remember them all sitting in their little booths with a grill round.
Exactly.
Like they're in a sort of prison.
Exactly. And I thought, if people will buy chess books from a place like that, what will they do? If I set up a shop where there's someone who's expert about them and can help you and can talk and you can maybe play a bit of chess, people will love that. I thought that'll be absolutely marvelous. And I had a little bit of experience already in publishing books, because I'd started a small chess book business with John Manley, who publishes the wonderful magazine, but now online, called Kingpin. And we started publishing openings booklets called Developments in the, and then the opening. We did the Developments in the King's Gambit, Developments in the Martial Attack, which I think I wrote, Developments in the Grunfeld. And we sold these books to chess booksellers around the world. And we'd sold them to foils as well. And I can tell you, it was just as unpleasant selling to foils as it was buying from them. And so I thought, if people will buy large volumes of chess books from foils, set up a nice shop, make a nice atmosphere, and they'll buy from us. And everyone said I was mad. Everyone said I was absolutely mad. But I disagreed, and I did it, and it's still there 30 years later.
Amazing.
That's how I got to start the shop. How I got the Telegraph gig was also funny. So there used to be, Andrew will remember this more than Nigel because he was in London, but in the 1980s, there was this, and since he's also got rigor mortis, we can say what we like about him, this absolutely crazy Egyptian chess player called Ali Armin. And Ali absolutely loved chess. He worked at the BBC, and he absolutely loved chess. And he managed to marry a very wealthy woman who lived in Highgate, who was an incredible cook. And he decided to open a chess cafe in Camden Town, which is this very nice area of London where they have a huge market. And they took over this shop in Camden Town and turned it into the most beautiful vegetarian restaurant. Like, the food was just exquisite, and you could play chess there. And they had a downstairs where they ran tournaments and things. And the trouble was, of course, that the chess players would just turn up and buy one cup of tea for the entire day. So it never financially. Yeah, it was financially, it was never really going to work. And he started this as the successor to a cafe in Hampstead, which is a very posh area of London, very nice area of London. And there was a cafe there opposite a hospital called the Royal Free, called the Prompt Corner. And this was the first chess cafe that I came across when I came down to London for university in 1978. And you used to be able to gamble, you used to be able to hustle in the Prompt Corner for money. And I used to supplement my meager student grant by beating people at Blitz for money in that restaurant. And the joke about the Prompt Corner was that it had the slowest service in London. I mean, it literally could take you an hour to get a coffee there. The waiters just didn't give a toss. But we played a lot of chess there. And then one day the Prompt Corner closed down, and Ali Armin opened his cafe, Checkers Chess Cafe. And literally, we took the chess sets out of the Prompt Corner one Saturday morning, I think it was, walked up the hill, and then walked down Haverstock Hill to Camden Town, plonked them on the tables at Checkers, and carried on the games. So it was like seamless. And Checkers lasted a few years, and people used to gamble on chess, as I say. And there was a chap there, a really nice guy called David Spanier, who was a professional journalist. He was a diplomatic correspondent for LBC, amongst other things. And he was also a professional poker player, but he was an absolutely rubbish chess player. And one day he was playing some blitz with someone and he lost, and he didn't have any money. And he said, oh, shit. He said, can anyone lend me £10? And I don't know. I mean, maybe some viewers, of course, who don't have English television, and this advert maybe isn't shown anywhere else outside England. But there's a wonderful advert for Kronenberg 18, whatever it is, in which a guy comes back from the First World War to a French bar, and he's treated as a hero. But then he's supposed, the barman wants to buy him a drink, but no one will pay, and everyone looks at the floor. Well, it was just like that. David Spanier said, can anyone lend me £10? Complete silence descended on the room. So I said, you know what, David, I'll lend you £10. And he said, "Oh, that's great. Thank you very much. I'll go down to the bank later with you and pay you back." And as we were walking down to the bank in Camden Town, he said, he said, "Every summer I go to play poker in the south of France, but I always get a lot of aggravation because people want to have the British Chess Championships covered in the newspaper." He said, "Would you do that for me?" I said, "I'd love to do that. Just tell me how it works." He said, "Well," he said, "you get a game of chess, you write a few words about what's going on, and then you have to phone it through to a copy taker." Now, I mean, this, for people who haven't lived in the pre-internet era, this is how newspapers were published in the old days. Correspondents would literally, the word was file your copy, and you had to phone a telephone number, at which point you got through to a room with lots of women with headsets on and typewriters, and you called out what it was you wanted to put in the newspaper, and they typed it in. And so I did this, but can you imagine, how do you communicate a game of chess to someone who's typing it in who doesn't know what chess is? So this is how it would go. I dial, hello, Telegraph copy, who's speaking? Malcom Pein. "Oh, chess, how are you, Malcolm?" "Yeah, I'm fine. Okay, you got a story for me?" "Yep." "Okay, off you go. Give me the words first." So I give her a few words about the British Chess Championships round 3. And it says, "Okay, let's have the game." So I would go, "Okay, the game is J. Hodgson - W. Watson, for the sake of argument. Nimzo Indian Defense." "How are you spelling Nimzo Indian?" "NIMZO hyphen capital I-D-I. "Thank you, dear. Okay, let's have the moves." And then it would literally go like this. So I've got them written down on a score sheet, and I would be calling this, I would go 1 dot, little d for dog 4, space, capital N for November, F for Freddy 6. New line, 2 dot, little c for Charlie 4, space, E for Echo 6. Now, if you can imagine, if you had a 70-move game, how long this would take, and I might be doing it from a public telephone box. And in those days, you had to put coins into the public telephone box, and when you ran out of money, it would go beep, 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 and if you didn't put your money in, you get cut off. and that was how I reported chess to the world. I mean, when the internet came, I cannot tell you, it literally saved me an hour a day. I mean, when I was able to send my stuff over on an email, it literally saved me an hour every day on the telephone. And
well, look, this is all fascinating stuff, and we could go on, but we're going to speak to Malcom Pein chess.
Oh well, I did play. I did used to play chess a bit. Yeah.
Can you be kind enough to take us through at least one of your games?
Yeah.
Right. Well, let me just introduce the. I need to get the appropriate link up there. There we go. Right now, this selection, Malcolm sent me over a dozen or so games, and I decided to select those of people that would not be coming on the show and be annoyed by their losses. So we've got 2 people who are no longer with us, and one mystery 2680 GM who were all very. This was billed as a training game, and of course, Andrew and I are going to try and find out who it is. Now, can we ask like 3 questions?
I'm not going to tell you who he is, but you can ask you 3 questions anyway.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, the questions cannot be who is he.
We've got to pick the clue.
Right. Was this training game? Did money change hands before training? Right.
No.
Okay.
Was the Grandmaster sober? Because it doesn't look so when you play through the game.
Sober as a judge.
Right. Okay. Number 3. Was he or did he become a King's Indian player after this game?
I'll tell you. The only thing I'll tell you is that the Grandmaster was already a King's Indian player.
Right. Okay. I think I know who it is. I'm not going to guess out loud because I suppose we might try and.
I wouldn't broadcast the name. You have to it's an absolute rout.
Yeah, well, it's quite a problem. I mean, he was probably like saying to himself, "Oh my God, if I keep playing the King's Indian, there's this new book of Andrew Martin coming out on the Tarzan Attack in the Barry. I need to learn something solid like the Queen's Gambit Declined."
What is the Tarzan Attack, Nigel?
It's I should let Andrew explain. What's the Tarzan Attack, Andrew?
I'm not going to get distracted. I want to see this game. This is a humdinger.
Well, okay. It's basically like this: Knight C3, D5, Bishop F4.
Oh right.
G7, Queen D2.
But I mean, this is basically the Barry, isn't it? This is the Barry attack.
Well, it's a sub-variation of the Barry.
Right. Okay.
It's not just the Barry anymore.
Sure. Oh, the Barry's got its own sidelines now. Fantastic.
Yeah. So,
by the way, we should talk about the derivation of the name Barry attack.
and that
I've spent a lot of time researching the actual origin.
It's to do. Julian Hodgson says it's to do with his dad. Which I also believe, but I also seem to remember it having once being. I mean, I remember a scene from the commentary at the Short Spielman match at the Barbican where Julian Hodgson was giving some commentary, and he was showing this idea, and there was a precocious boy called Casper Bates in the audience, and I seem to remember Casper shouting out from the audience, "Julian, that's an absolute load of Barry." I mean, I don't know.
So
okay. Solid Queen's Gambit declined. My opponent played.
Yeah. So it looks like a man who's trying to learn a new opening apart from the King's Indian. Mm-hmm. This always happens. You try and play something solid, but you're just geared, to a different kind of chess.
Sure.
So we had E3. So this is all well known.
This is all theory. Yeah.
Yeah. We've got an attempted Tartakova, probably.
Yeah. Right. Now the thing is, what my opponent didn't know was that this is in fact one of the old lines that I used to play in the 1980s. So I actually knew what I was doing. I'd had a game in Lugano against a guy called Svetkovic, a grandmaster called Svetkovic. I mean, these guys, none of these games are in Chessbase because it's in the pre-Chessbase era. So
what is the actual date of this game?
When did I play it?
Yonks ago.
No, it's not that long. It's not that long ago. It's not that long ago.
So you're about to play an old-fashioned line for white, which has some sting or something like that.
Exactly. And funnily enough, this is also a line that I used when I. Do you remember the BIS banking systems rapid plays that were held in the Savoy Theatre in the late 80s?
No, I don't.
Maybe not. Well, yeah, no, I played this line because I managed to qualify for the main event because I drew with Anand and I beat Andrew Whiteley, the late international Andrew Whiteley, in this line, I remember.
I mean, at this time, the Karpov-Kasparov games, there were a lot of these, weren't they? White played Rook C1.
Yeah, that's right. And there's an old main line in which Black takes on C4 and goes Knight D7 and E5, and White gets quite a lot of activity. I think but I think the computer has analysed it out to equality. So Rook C1 isn't really. I think it's lost its popularity now. I think in general.
It's Queen D2. There's all sorts of moves have been.
Yeah. Well, in fact, it's very interesting because Queen D2 and Queen B3. Queen B3 is more positional. Queen B3 followed by Rook D1, trying to restrain C5. I think it's Korchnoi Langeweg, but that's in the Tartakova with B6. But the differences between Queen C2 and Queen D2 are very subtle in this line.
Yeah.
Once you start the kingside pawn storm, and it's quite interesting.
I had a lot of success with Queen D2, and I got the idea from Nigel, who mentioned that it was a favourite of Lev Sarkis. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. Correct.
And one of the differences is if the C file opens up, you might not want your queen on C2.
Correct.
Queen side.
Correct.
I mean, Queen D2, you just shove your H pawn and G pawn up the board, don't you? That's the main idea, isn't it?
That's right. And Queen C2, I have the same idea. The differences are very subtle. I must admit I don't remember a lot of detail about it. But I just thought I'd go Queen C2 because he was less likely to know it.
I stockfish notated these games before putting them up because otherwise I get confused. So the viewers should ignore this stupid sign on that move. Right, yes. It's a perfectly decent move.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, stockfish does generate some rather strange things. So G6
looks odd.
It's a prophylactic move. I mean, it's typical for Black when White goes H4 and G4 for Black to go G6 and Bishop G7 because. It's actually worth demonstrating this, Nigel, maybe to viewers. I mean, the point is that if White now goes something like, so after G6, say, if White goes, so play G6. If White plays, say, a move like H4.
Yeah, and then you go Bishop G7.
Bishop G7, G4. Or h5, you can go g5. That's number one. And secondly, if you go g4 and g5, black can go. So go knight. I don't know, c6 or something. Yeah, g5. No, you can go h5.
Yeah.
And then white's attack it just disappears. So it's a clever sort of prophylactic idea. Whether or not it's the best move, I suspected it probably isn't. It doesn't feel active enough to me. G6.
Yeah. This is what made me think it's a King's Indian player, because we tend to sort of gravitate towards our positions we know, even if we play a different opening. So
Right.
my first attempt at a Queen's Indian was like horrible. You know, I put my knight in front of my c pawn or something.
Right.
But that's what I did in the modern defence. And so,
okay.
You just try and later black played f5 in this game as well, which was another sort of indication. It's like these moves get tuned into you, you know.
Right.
So we got g6, castle's queenside.
Yep, let him have it.
Right, a6.
I mean, normal chess, I think, just trying to counter me on the queen side, so I've got to get on with it. So I played h4.
Yeah. And now black goes bishop g7, you know, hoping for this h5, g5 thing.
Yeah.
Prophylactic king b1.
Yeah, I think that's always a good idea. Fisher used to say you should always play king b1.
And this is another indication it's a King's Indian player, because
yes,
Queen's Gambit players usually go DC and something or other.
That's right. I mean, if you're a Queen's Gambit player, your instinct would be to go DC and b5, as you say, or potentially c5, pawn takes pawn, queen a5, or something like that. Yeah. So CD, ED. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm not going to take on b5 and open up lines on the queen side, right? So.
Yeah, and this way black's c pawn is backward, and it may make it difficult for him to mobilise his queenside pawns later on.
Exactly.
So now we have h5, g5, bishop d3, looking to take control of light squares.
Yep.
And with bishop f5, when white's going to dominate a lot of these weak squares.
Could I show off here, Nigel?
Yeah, go on.
I'd actually seen the key points of the game even at this point. So it's quite, even at my advanced age, my brain does seem occasionally to tick into gear. That was what gave me the most pleasure.
Okay. Well, black played f5, which is another like King's Indian player move, because King's Indian players, they're expansive and they want to push pawns. Queen's Gambit decline players are more like accountants.
Yes. Yes.
You know, they'll be quite careful in it. Sort of, you know.
I think this guy should give up chess and become an accountant.
Well, he should play the obviously play the King's Indian, you know, because he's all tuned up for it.
He likes pushing his pawns. That's all.
Look, I mean, if f5 works, I'm in big trouble actually, because I've got no attack at
horrible.
all.
It looks like a horrible move.
But it just felt wrong to me, you know, positionally. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, black's only got one piece developed here. His bishop. Yep. The king is here with his, standing in with the wind in his hair, and all white's pieces are working. So if white opens the position up, you've got to think it's going to be good for white.
Oh, sure. I mean, it's.
Actually, if you just go back, you did have a threat here, didn't you? You got a vicious threat already.
Yeah, knight takes e5.
Oh, I didn't want to say that.
All right. Okay. Oh, sorry. We've got another two games here.
This is you really smash him up. He's asking to be crushed, isn't he?
Well, I mean, the point is actually his concept works completely, were it not for the fact that I've got one very devious tactic, which I'd seen, which you'll see in a minute. So actually, it's not so. It comes very close to working, his plan, actually, because I've got I appear to have no way to open up his king, but I find a way.
Well, then let's see it.
Knight e5.
Nice move.
Right. So, okay. So it looks like g4 is going to be the lever.
Exactly.
Black plays c5.
Yes.
Still managing not to develop any pieces.
Every pawn pushed now, not a single pawn left behind.
That's a good point. You know, it never occurred to me that. That's a very interesting point. Yeah.
Together, brothers. Right. And now we've got g4. And of course, if black takes it, we're going to have all sorts of very.
Yeah, you should check that out. That's fun. Yeah.
Right. So knight g6 check takes. Are we going to take that one? Yeah.
Probably take his rook. No.
Double check. King here, and then There should be. You'd think there'd be something more violent than just. Well, I suppose we can go back with the knight.
Do you need violence anymore?
Yeah,
Probably
we
not.
probably don't. I mean, I reckon D takes C5 is probably very strong here as well, actually.
Yeah, I would have thought so. So G4 is met by C takes D4. Black evidently doesn't want to open the king side up, but now white just takes back here. Now he takes the pawn.
Good.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that I think that this was actually very clever, because if I do the knight takes rook stuff, it actually isn't any good anymore. This actually isn't that good.
Right.
This is actually clever of him, because I've got to watch. First of all, he goes king G8.
Yeah.
I go knight G6.
Knight C6.
And now knight C6 is actually pretty unpleasant, threatening knight takes D4. And I've got to watch out for queen F6 and bishop F5. I'm exposed.
Knight takes D5, can't you?
Knight takes D5. What, you want to play queen takes D5, queen takes C6?
Yeah.
I think there's a bit of trickery with bishop F5 check first or something. I've got to be careful.
Yeah. But we know for sure who this was as black. And he even came to a coaching session of ours, but we're not going to say any more.
Okay.
You're joking. You can't.
Yeah, it is. So
All right, I won't give the game away.
Right, okay. So what's happened? In fact?
No, FG was very clever, but it just loses for the specific reason, which is I've got this amazing knight takes D5 move that just blows everything out of the water.
Beautiful.
And then queen takes D5. Now the very good Zwischenzug bishop H7 check, because after king H8, which is forced, then bishop E4 not only skewers the queen against the rook, but white's going to have a knight G6 check as well.
Yeah, the point is that if he goes bishop F5, if he goes queen takes E4, this was his plan when he went F5. I mean, he'd seen all of this, right? But he just missed one point, which we should show, otherwise the game doesn't make any sense. Which is his original intention all the way back when he went F5 was to go here, which would be very good, but it just allows this bit of trickery.
Yeah, and so now if king H7, you take the rook check first, which defends the bishop on F5. So we might as well show all these lines. So that removes the defender of the bishop on F5 with check. So white gets the bishop next move. And then the other move, if we go back here, if black goes this way, then white has got this check and he takes the bishop with the knight.
Very nice.
So very good.
Nice. Very nice.
Yeah. So bishop E4, bishop F5, and now white can just take on F5.
Yeah.
And we've got this position where black is still hugely behind the development. He's threatened with knight G6 check. He's threatened with bishop E4, and he's probably threatened with other things too. Simplifying, or trying to simplify, D takes E5, trying to exchange queens, but it no longer matters even if black exchanges queens. Because
I've got a huge attack here.
Queen takes E5 there. That was bad.
Oh gosh, I dismissed that. I just assumed it just lost.
Exactly.
I'm guessing queen takes E5. Well, he can't develop anything, so maybe he can't develop his. Oh, you're threatening to take my rook, my bishop. Oh, I think it's rook H. Is it rook He1, queen F5, takes, rook D8 check, king G7. Oh, rook F7 he has.
Well, even bishop takes G4 will be very strong because
followed by rook He1, I suppose. Yeah.
Could you have just gone maybe here? Would that not have cleaned him up?
That looks pretty strong as well, to be honest.
I don't know, just off the top of my head.
Yeah, no, that looks pretty strong. I just didn't want to give him any counterplay at all. I mean, I was a bit worried actually that he'd move his queen somewhere like, I don't know, F7 or something, and then start counter-attacking my d-pawn, but with his knight. But it's probably just rubbish. But
this is going to be very strong because he can't even develop his knight right now.
That's the point. Yeah, rook He1 is coming.
Rook He1 is coming.
Yeah.
This is horrible position.
That's over.
Yeah. So queen. yeah, it's over.
I'm the patron saint of lost causes.
Queen c4, and now the rook comes in. So white's even going to attack after the exchange of queens.
Yeah.
Queen takes c2 check, bishop takes c2. Now the threat is against this pawn on h6.
And he still can't move the knight, yeah? That's the joy of it.
He still can't move the knight. And when the h6 pawn falls, which it must, because king g7, you play rook g6 check, then the white gets a passed h pawn as well.
Yep.
So we have this, takes here, check, king g7. So if you go king g8, there is bishop b3 check, king g7, rook g6 check, then king h8, for example, rook c1, and white has just got an overwhelming position because of the much greater activity of his pieces. This knight's still not working, and black's king is very weak, even without the queens on. So this presumably is a blunder, which indicates to me it might also have been an internet game. Possibly. Malcolm remaining very tight-lipped about this.
What's the chess equivalent of taking the fifth?
We already know who it is. We already know. He just gave the. You should have said between 2400 and 2800. That way we might not.
No, I mean 2680 was just a rough approximation.
Yeah.
So how did Harry Golombek take it, Malcolm?
Golly never became a GM, did he?
No, not surprised with games like that.
Or did he get an honorary? He got an honorary, did he? I can't remember.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah.
Oh well, a nice game. We better go on to the next game.
Yeah, let's move on. And now we have David Bronstein, who spent a long time in the UK. I think he had he wanted to be an English chess player, basically.
He did, didn't he? Yeah.
Along the lines of Harold Bird, because I think he spent a lot of time studying chess history and reminiscences.
Mm.
By Harold Bird. Harold Bird's the umpire.
A different Harold Bird, the chess player, because Bronstein was he would he said the main problem with chess was when Steinitz wanted 20 shillings or something to play a match for the World Championship.
Outrageous.
Instead of playing for a chop at Simpsons. And this is right. This is discussed by Harold Bird in Chess History and Reminiscences. I'm very good on pre-1930 stuff, by the way. So we have David Bronstein.
That just reminded me of the surviving in the 1970s and 1980s. So that's true.
I need to give you a very short introduction to this game, which is that it was played in the London League because David Bronstein used to stay with the Hannon family, who Nigel knew very well.
Yeah, I stayed there
and Mr. Hannon ran and pretty much financially supported Charlton Chess Club and a lot of chess players. And when David Bronstein was in England, the Hannons kindly hosted him at their lovely house in Charlton.
Yeah.
And so this was a match between Charlton Chess Club and Wood Green Chess Club. And I had a job at the time. And I also used to have to send in my copy to the Telegraph at the same, and the deadline was fairly near the London League starting time. And so I would nearly always be late for my London League games because I'd just done my Daily Telegraph column. And I was actually half an hour late for this game in a 90-minute time control, which was, potentially disastrous. But it just gave me the freedom to play fairly quickly because I had to. So I'm black here.
Interesting you played the perk because, of course, nowadays it's a little bit out of fashion. But back then it was all the rage, wasn't it?
It was indeed, yes.
You could Botterill and Keen's books on the subject.
Well, indeed.
Just classics.
Just give me a second. I'm just going to leave the screen for a moment.
If you want to get the book by Botterill and Keen, I can sense.
Hang on. I've got. Just make sure there's no green on the cover. Look, the perk. We've all got one.
This one you mean?
We've all got one.
And there it is.
I've got the Botterill and Keen book here.
Absolutely fantastic book. Yeah.
Ripped to shreds.
Yeah.
Through overreading.
Yeah.
Right. So we get an Austrian attack, f4. Bishop G7, and now Bronstein's specialty, because he played this line quite a lot with pawn to E5. And now black can take and go into an endgame where he's got less space.
Yeah.
So this is a known line.
I think you're supposed to play knight H5 now. They discovered eventually, didn't they, that knight H5 is not that bad here, no?
Yeah, it's a good move, isn't it?
Oh, okay. Maybe I don't know. I haven't kept up to date with this. So
hang on, hold on, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. It is right. It is right.
Doesn't it allow?
Because if you go back here, this position here.
I thought that was with the knight F3
exactly. It's with knight F3 castles that knight H5 is okay, because knight D5 is now met by rook D8. But after the immediate E5, it's nowhere near as good because knight D5 is too good, right? You can't do it here.
So let's have a look. Takes,
King takes
here. This
knight D5 is very strong now, isn't it? Because if knight A6, bishop takes. I think this is just. I think you've got to go king D8 and you're groveling. I think, no.
Yeah, possibly.
Well,
yeah, I think this is known to be bad.
It's entering the twilight zone already.
Yeah.
Both players moving their kings around.
Yeah.
Well, is it that bad for black? I can't believe it's that bad. I don't know.
I don't know. We need to move on. We might have to restrict ourselves just to this game and move on to Bagirov when you're next back on the show.
Sure. Well, it'd be a pleasure to come on again anyway. So
no brilliant. Problem, right. Okay. Yeah. So knight FD7, knight F3.
Bananas in this game, didn't he?
Yeah. C5.
He just wanted to crush me. Yeah.
Really?
Well, he might have thought that you should be on time for him, but of course you probably didn't know you were going to play him.
Of course, I absolutely no idea.
Yeah, they had all their lodgers playing at some time, including me, Max Fuller, and Murray Chandler.
Right.
Because all the Hannan's lodgers turned up and played for Charlton at some time.
That was part of the deal, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, sort of. I mean, not officially, but you couldn't really refuse. And they were sort of, after they got their eighth bottle of wine out the cellar. Would you mind playing a game tomorrow, Nigel? Yeah, sure.
Nigel, I'm going to refrain from telling the story about the cup of tea and what you thought of it and what you said on the grounds that it would in today's modern era it would incriminate you so badly you'd never recover from it.
Water off a duck's back at this stage. So, yeah, but not everybody understands English humour. You see, this is why is why our show is doomed to be a niche thing.
Suffice it to say that the Hannans had a very, very attractive daughter.
That wasn't their daughter. That was
who was it?
That was Rosemarie's niece.
Ah, okay, niece. Okay.
Yeah. So
let's pick up the game again with Malcolm destroying white centre.
Yeah.
Knight C6. So the important line here: E6 is met by.
He did that.
Was met by knight takes D4, because E takes D7 check. You take back with the queen.
And I'm a piece up
on D4.
Yeah.
So but Bronstein's idea. I mean, obviously he would have seen that and takes back here. And now we're going to ignore what Stockfish recommends.
Yeah. Now I played a very ballsy move. F takes E6.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hell of a move.
And white goes queen D2.
Yeah, because I mean we don't have much time, but knight takes E6. I think I've just got bishop takes C3 check, and I'm completely fine.
Yeah. Queen A5.
Yeah, maybe show that just very quickly.
Yeah, I'll show that. So knight takes E6 is met by bishop takes, pawn takes, queen B6.
Queen B6 is the knight.
Otherwise, queen D4.
It's the knight.
Yeah.
Queen A5, queen D4.
Yeah, good point. Good point.
Check as well.
Well, I've got yeah.
So okay, so E6, F takes E6, queen D2.
This is seemed completely logical. Opening up the bishop on C8, attacking the knight twice. I mean, it just all the moves flow from here quite nicely, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I think that Bronstein probably drifted into this position. I mean, he would play occasional games very seriously, right? But a lot of the time he was just making draws, and he just wanted to sort of stick around England and and talk to people and stuff.
Is it so bad after check? Bishop B5.
Bishop D7.
Well, then takes it in castles. I just wanted to get some pieces off the board.
Yeah, I might even castle queenside in that position.
I mean, black's position is just superb with this bishop, isn't it?
Yeah. So queen e3.
And now what was interesting to me here, guys, was that suddenly maybe there's a rather sneaky possibility of going e5, knight on d4 moves, knight b3 check, winning the queen, which was, and also obviously I'm lining up on b2 and stuff and getting my queen out of the way of his rook. So I played that fairly quickly, I think.
Nice move.
Yeah, looks terrific for black.
Should he play king b1 maybe?
No, he went bishop c4, so I developed a piece.
Yeah. So it doesn't work, your trick now? No, he's pinned, of course.
Yeah, exactly.
My fault.
Exactly.
Yeah, so e6 is still defended. King b1.
Yeah.
But White's game, I mean, I'm sure Bronstein knew that his position wasn't very good.
Mm.
Rook ac8. Knight f3.
Yeah, which would be very good if he could play knight e5. But I don't let him. I play a rather surprising move now, which I think he just completely overlooked. It's very anti-intuitive, isn't it? But there are hanging pieces here.
Yeah. Oh, very good, very good. Because now, after queen takes c3, which is forced, black goes knight a4. And now, if white plays queen b3, you just play rook takes c4. And it's that when, queen... Yeah, that wins a piece, doesn't it? Because
Well, I've got a hanging bishop on d7, but I'm threatening
but you've
b2.
Got b4.
You've got rook b4 then. That's it.
Yeah, well, we'll see. It's the same theme as in the game, actually. So we can move on.
Okay,
Yep.
so queen a3.
Yep.
And now rook takes c4, rook takes d7, knight takes b2.
Very nice.
And the other way would have been queen b3. Well, actually, the engine wants to play rook takes f3 here.
Yeah, there's some obscure point that you want the knight off the board, but the effect is good for black anyway. It just gets two pieces for a rook.
So you play rook c4, and then rook b4.
Yeah.
And you get b2 with some sort of massive attack.
Yeah.
So queen a3, rook takes c4, rook takes d7, and now the thunderbolt, knight takes b2, which opens up white's king. When he goes king a1...
It's very important, by the way, Nigel, that if he goes queen takes e7, I go knight d3 check and make next move. So that I'm attacking him and stopping his attack at the same time.
Yeah, we'll point that out. So it's queen takes there, knight here, check, covering c1, and then the king has to move. Well, you can put the queen in the way, and then queen b2 mate. And also, if queen takes b2, then just rook b4, winning the queen. White goes king a1. And now knight a4 was played, getting the knight back, but after having broken up white's king. Rook b1, and I think someone is mowing Malcolm.
Yeah, well, I'm going to go on mute until I want to speak. So
okay. So queen b3, and it's losing, but the end game is losing as well because. Black is a lot of material up. So if you take on c5, then knight takes, covers b7, and the c2 pawn is falling. So that's going to be some pawns up for black. Then rook takes c2. So now if queen takes a4, there's queen c3 check, followed by mate. Just show that as well. And when white goes queen takes e6 check, then black can just defend with rook f7, and then rook d8 check, king g7. Still, there's a threat here of queen c3 check, followed by mate, so white goes rook back to d3.
Nigel, it's worth pointing out that if he goes queen e5, I take and knight c3.
Ah, okay, that's quite nice, yeah. So queen e5, takes, nice tactic with knight c3, threatening the rook, threatening the a pawn, and if rook b2, you can play rook c1 check or rook f1 check followed by mate. So that's that variation. King g7, rook d3, trying to defend, but now this lethal blow, knight c3, threatening to win the queen with rook takes a2 check, and in fact there's not an awful lot white can do about that. If he goes rook b2, then there's rook c1 check. Show that. And then rook b1, you take mate. Rook takes b7. Rook takes a2 check. Queen takes a2. Knight takes a2. King takes a2. And at the end of this all, black also wins the rook on d3 with queen c2 check. And that was that. Who won the match?
You know, I don't remember.
Okay.
It's from the 1980s, this game, I
think. Just wondering. So, yeah. But I know Malcolm's incredibly busy, and so I think we're going to wind things up on time for a change. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Please send me all the links and everything about the finding homes for Ukrainian chess players, because there's some it's a horrifying thing that's happening. And is it okay if we put a Malcom Pein guest page up on our site? This is
by all means.
I'll show you where it is. So we've got Adrian here, and
yeah.
Right. We won't put a contact form up because you might not want to be contacted. But he was okay with the contact form. And where's the guests gone? Here we go. So we've got 2 guests. We're going to have a 3rd guest. So brilliant.
You'll have to come on again, Malcolm, because I had a raft of questions. I only got to ask one. Still, it was a fantastic answer. But
well, we probably got enough for at least 5 shows, and then yeah. So thanks very much indeed for coming on. And
well, thanks to you guys. It was great fun. We'll do it again.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Brilliant.
All right. Cheers.
Okay,
bye for now.
Yeah. Bye.
Good show, Nigel.
Sorry.
Good show.
Yeah. Hang on.
Cheers.
Yeah. See ya.
See you tomorrow.
Yeah. Bye.